Section 4.2 and 4.3, photosynthesis. Photosynthetic organisms are also known as producers, or autotrophs, meaning self-feeder. These organisms are able to make their own energy. Photosynthetic organisms make it through the process of photosynthesis. Chemosynthetic organisms make their own food through the process of chemosynthesis. Both of these are producers, or both these types are producers, and both of these would be the primary producers for their ecosystems. Non-producers, or consumers, or heterotrophs, all these things would be organisms that are unable to make their own food, so they have to eat other organisms to obtain energy. This is an example of an herbivore. It's a zebra eating grass. They get all their energy from grazing. Omnivores, these bears, they will eat plant products, but they will also eat meat. And carnivores, like the tiger here, who only eats meat. Those are non-producers. Photosynthesis is a process that captures energy from sunlight, or light energy, to make sugars that store this light energy in the form of chemical energy. This occurs in plants in the organelle of plant cells called the chloroplast, and photosynthesis is able to trap this light energy and convert it into chemical energy in the form of sugars. So how is it possible to say that a person who eats only red meat still gets their energy from producers? Well, if a person is only eating red meat, or since a person is only eating red meat, the red meat is getting the energy from the producers. Red meat comes from cattle, so the cattle are getting their energy from grass, and this person is getting their energy from the cattle. Okay, so grass through photosynthesis, here's our sun. Through photosynthesis is trapping that light energy, putting it into the form of sugars. The cattle are eating the grass, getting energy from that to produce the meat that is then eaten by the person who only eats red meat. So they are getting their energy indirectly from the producers. Chlorophyll is a pigment molecule in the chloroplast, in the organelle within plant cells called the chloroplast, that absorbs some of the energy in the visible light spectrum to trigger photosynthesis. And there are two types of chlorophyll, A and B. They both absorb wavelengths of light, but in slightly different wavelengths for different colors. So as you can see, it's absorbing in certain colors. This light is going into the thylakoid membrane, and it's reflecting green because it doesn't absorb green, which is why plants look green. Okay, so chlorophyll is a pigment. It's a molecule. Okay, it's not an organelle, but it's a pigment within the organelle called the chloroplast that is able to absorb some of the light energy in the visible spectrum and uses that energy to drive the process of photosynthesis. So a chloroplast is a membrane-bound organelle in plant cells where photosynthesis takes place. It's found in the leaves, and there's three main parts of it. The stroma, which is this fluid-filled space all around these stacks. Okay, the thylakoid membrane, which are these individual membrane-bound stacks, and then this whole thing together is called the grain of this whole big, I call it a stack of pancakes, but poker chips, whatever. These stacks of thylakoid membrane are called granum or grana. And this is where photosynthesis takes place. Okay, so the photosynthesis equation. This is something you are responsible to know. Okay, so first, 6 CO2 plus 6 water with energy provided by light is going to produce C6H12O6 and 6O2. So that's the chemical equation. What this is saying in words is 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 water plus light makes sugar, well, in the form of glucose, but other sugars as well, and 6 oxygen gas. Now, you should know it both as this, the chemical equation, and this, be able to say it in words. You should know both of these. Big hint, 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 on a quiz, on a test, on a final exam coming up. You're going to want to know it both ways. So photosynthesis in plants occurs in two main stages. The light-dependent reactions. Light-dependent meaning reactions that require light in order for them to go. The light is actually providing the energy for these reactions to take place. And then the light-independent reactions, which actually use molecules formed in the light-dependent reactions to fuel or provide energy for these guys to take place. So two stages, light-dependent reactions and light-independent reactions. So first one is light-dependent reactions. The light-dependent reactions occur in and on the thylakoid membrane of the chloroplast. The thylakoid are these stacks of membrane right here where the light-dependent reactions take place. And they're able to convert light energy into chemical energy. Okay, one of the reactants it needs is water. The water is going to come from the plant absorbing it through its roots. And one of the products of the light-dependent reactions is oxygen, or oxygen gas. Okay, two other products of light-dependent reactions are these two energy-containing molecules called ATP and NADPH. ATP and NADPH. These things actually provide energy, or the source of energy for the light-independent reactions which follow the light-dependent reactions. These things are called biochemical pathways. A series of reactions, linked reactions, where the products of one are the reactants in the next. Okay, so these are all linked reactions. One has to take place before the other, and they're linked together in this way. So all of this is a thylakoid. This whole structure here is a thylakoid membrane. And briefly, what's happening in the light reactions at the thylakoid membrane is light energy right here. One of our reactants is hitting this cluster of chlorophyll molecules, and it's raising the electrons on the chlorophyll to a higher state, to the point where they actually leave to go to this place called the electron transport chain. At the same time this is happening, water is being split. And what it's doing, it's being split into 4 protons. Some of these protons are going to diffuse out, but then get pumped back in to form a gradient of hydrogen ions. We'll talk about those in a second. Okay, the electrons are replacing the electrons lost by the chlorophyll molecules that are excited by light hitting them, and oxygen gas is being produced. Remember, oxygen gas is one of our products from the light reactions. Okay, so we got oxygen coming out. There's our first product. These hydrogens that are being pumped back in here to make this gradient are going through this enzyme called ATP synthase. And ATP synthase is responsible for converting ADP to ATP. Right here. again, that's one of the products from the light reactions is ATP, and it's produced from here, from the energy formed from water splitting. The electrons that are leaving these chlorophyll molecules going down this electron transport chain eventually provide the energy to convert NADP plus with this proton to NADPH, the other high energy containing molecule produced in the light reactions of photosynthesis. So we have our three products from light reactions. Oxygen gas produced by the splitting of water, ATP, which is produced by ATP synthase, the enzyme, and the hydrogen ions that came from the splitting of water provide the energy to convert ADP to ATP. The electrons, the other part of the water that's being split, provides the energy to convert NADP plus to NADPH, the other or third product of light reactions of photosynthesis. So, the light dependent reactions, this is the first electron transport chain. This would happen at photosystem 2. This first cluster of chlorophyll molecules we talked about. Light hits the chlorophyll. The electrons on the chlorophyll molecules get excited and actually leave. This energy from the electrons causes water to split, releasing oxygen. Remember, that's our first product of the light reactions or light dependent reactions of photosynthesis. Okay, water splitting provides new electrons to replace the ones lost by the chlorophyll, and this energy creates a concentration gradient of hydrogen ions, which is going to be used in the second part of light dependent reactions. So, the second part of the light dependent reactions, this is happening at the second electron transport chain, or photosystem 1. These deactivated electrons from the first electron transport chain, that is this, they lose energy as they go down, get re-excited from light hitting photosystem 1, and this triggers a reaction that produces NADPH. The concentration gradient of hydrogens inside the thylakoid membrane is going to cause ATP synthase to produce ATP. Okay, so we got oxygen gas produced in the first part. We get NADPH and ATP produced in the second part. Now, this whole idea of photosystem 1 and photosystem 2, that is these guys. This is photosystem 2, and this is photosystem 1. Now, even though it starts here, starts with photosystem 2, it's more by the way they were discovered, is why they're named, not necessarily the order of the reactions. So, photosystem 2 starts the electron transport chain. Remember, light energy hits here, causes the chlorophyll molecules to get excited, and their electrons leave to this electron transport chain. Water splits, produces electrons that replace the ones off the chlorophyll molecules here. It also produces oxygen gas, and protons that will build up the gradient inside. These electrons travel down the electron transport chain until they hit photosystem 1. More light enters. They get re-excited and provides energy to make NADPH. This proton gradient or hydrogen ion gradient building up is going to cause ATP synthase to produce ATP. And then we get our three products of the light-dependent reactions of photosynthesis. So let's just go through all this, right? Light hits photosystem 2, excites the electrons on chlorophyll, so they leave and go to the electron transport chain. Every time they get passed from one molecule to the next, they lose a little bit of energy, so you can see this energy level is going down. Okay, while this is happening, this energy causes water to split into 3 different components, right? First, you get oxygen gas, and then we're getting 4 electrons and 4 protons. The electrons replace those lost by the chlorophyll molecules in photosystem 2. And the protons are going to start building up this gradient of protons within the thylakoid membrane. Some of the protons will actually diffuse out. It's okay, they get pumped back in by this proton pump in the membrane. Cell membrane pump is going to push that in. Okay, the electrons that are traveling down here, when they hit photosystem 1, this is photosystem 1, more light hits it, raises their energy level back up, and they will go here and produce NADPH with a proton from water and an electron from this electron transport chain. The gradient of protons building up in here, remember proton is a hydrogen ion, are going to go through ATP synthase and drive the synthesis of ADP plus the inorganic phosphate to ATP. And we get our 3 products, oxygen, NADPH, and ATP. Oxygen is going to diffuse out of the plant and go to the atmosphere. NADPH and ADP are going to go to the next part of photosynthesis, which is called the light-independent reactions. So, the second major part of photosynthesis are light-independent reactions. So the light-independent reactions occur in the stroma, this fluid-filled space, okay, around the thylakoid membrane. All this stuff is just fluid-filled stroma all around. Okay, the light-independent reactions are called the Calvin cycle, named after Melvin Calvin, plant physiologist who discovered these pathways, or carbon fixation, because this is where the actual carbon dioxide is going to get fixed or used to form sugars and other organic compounds from the light-independent reactions. The light-independent reactions use energy from the electron transport chain, the 2 high-energy compounds, ATP and NADPH, that were produced from the light-dependent reactions. This energy will be used in a series of reactions to convert the 6CO2 into glucose. 6CO2 from the equation of photosynthesis, 6CO2 plus 6 water with light energy produces sugar, C6H12O6, and 6 oxygen. The CO2 gets into the plant, absorbed through the stomata, these little pores. Okay, all these things open up and allow gas exchange. So CO2 in, oxygen out. Those are the stomata in the plant cell, and they just allow gas to get in or out. Gas in the form of CO2, gas out in the form of oxygen. The light-independent reactions occur in the stroma, the space around the thylakoid membrane. So the light-independent reactions, or what's also called the Calvin cycle, is literally a cycle. It goes around, it starts and ends with the same molecule, starts and ends with this 6-RUBP. It's using energy from NADPH and energy from ATP to drive the synthesis of glucose in the Calvin cycle. Now, we're not going to go through every step on this, but just know that it starts and ends with the same molecule. Carbon comes in, CO2 comes in, ATP is used to provide energy, NADPH is used to provide energy. Glucose is produced, comes out, and ATP is used to provide energy to get back to where we started from, our UBP. Okay, you're not going to be responsible for knowing all of the steps. Just understand it's a cycle, and that these products, ATP, NADPH, made from the light-dependent reactions, provide energy to produce the product, glucose, of the light-independent reactions. Okay, and also CO2 is carbon dioxide is fixed in the Calvin cycle. Fixed meaning turned into a different molecule called glucose. So, light-independent reaction, or Calvin cycle, makes sugars. The sugars are needed for energy for all living things. Remember, this is taking place in the producers, in plants. They're making energy for themselves in the form of sugar, but they're also making energy for all the different organisms that would eat their leaves or eat their fruit to get their energy out of. So, carbon dioxide, reactant, that's used in the Calvin cycle. Water, reactant, that's broken up and used in the light-dependent reactions. Produce sugar, made in the Calvin cycle, and oxygen, which is made in the light-dependent reactions. Okay, so this whole process, photosynthesis, is to make sugar for all living things. So back to our photosynthesis equation. Remember, you need to know this. You need to know this whole thing. 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O with light energy produces C6H12O6 and 6 oxygen. Okay, again, 6 carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is going to be used in the Calvin cycle as a reactant, plus 6 water is going to be used in the light-dependent reactions, and it breaks up into 4 electrons, 4 protons, and oxygen gas, plus light, are going to produce, will produce 1 molecule of sugar, glucose, which is produced in the Calvin cycle, and 6 molecules of oxygen, which will diffuse out of the plant from the light-dependent reactions. Again, you need to know this reaction in words and the equation itself, complete with coefficients on your reactants and products.